Well, hey, good morning, and welcome to The Journey. I really do appreciate every one of you that are here today, and those who are with us for the first time. Just thank you so much for coming. As we mention every week, you are, wherever you're at on your journey, you are welcome here. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with what I say. It's okay. You are welcome here, and just glad you're here. We hope you enjoy your time, that you take something that makes sense to you today, and we hope that you come and join us again and again. So this morning we're going to continue our series called He Said What? Okay, He Said What? And we've been looking at, over the last few weeks, some of the crazy and shocking, extreme, I just can't believe he said that type statements from Jesus. Jesus, who is well known as a good teacher and good morals and all kinds of things like that. He's generally looked up to in a lot of societies if people know about him. But there are a lot of things that he said that shocked people. A lot of things that he said that were just, what are you talking about? And what I love about Jesus is that he wasn't afraid to say these things either. He wasn't afraid at all. And so things like love your enemies, like we saw last week, love your enemies, and pray for those who hurt you. And you're like, love them? Are you drunk? Jesus, I think maybe you turned a little bit too much of that water into wine or something, because that doesn't make sense, okay? His hearers were thinking those kinds of things. Or if you want to be great, you must first become a slave. I thought slavery is illegal, Jesus, wouldn't it make sense to get a good education first, get your name out there, maybe push a few people around in the midst of it, then I'll become great. And Jesus, no, you must first become a slave or a servant. Or how about, if anyone comes to me and doesn't hate their mother and father and brothers and sisters and family, he is not worthy to follow me. Whoa. Jesus, you're going a little bit too far now. Hate my parents? Of course, for some people might think, well, that's easy. I've been doing it for years, But what else you got, Jesus? But he said things that were tough, And if you are here and you're a seeker, you're spiritually curious, I hope this gives you a taste of who Jesus is, because there are a lot of imaginary Jesuses out there. And it's good to be able to say, all right, what did Jesus say? And what's he talking about? So, question for you today. And if you're on our email, you got this question on Friday or Saturday. If you check your email. If you don't check your email, check your email. Okay? Anyway, so here's the question today. What would you give to save your life? Or what would you be willing to give to save your own life? When all is said and done, and if you were faced with a life and death situation, what would you be willing to give in order to live? Okay? And the title of the talk this morning is Chop, Chop, Scoop. Okay? I know it sounds like one of those cable cooking shows, Emilio or somebody, I don't know, whatever, or like my family would go in San Francisco. They'd sometimes on my birthday would take me out to a restaurant called Benihana, one of those Japanese places where they in front of you with all the food and you eat a lot. It's good. But we're going to look at something that Jesus said. Are you guys okay? You guys awake? Yes. Okay. Great. We should maybe supply monster sodas or something, or, something for everyone to, be amped up. Okay, here we go. But we're going to look at something that Jesus said, and I want you to pretend that you were there, okay? Imagine that you had never heard this before. And it's quite possible that some of you haven't heard this, and that's good. But imagine you're there, and this is your first time hearing Jesus say this, okay? I'm going to start it out on the screen, and it says that he said this: if your right eye causes you to sin. Okay? Now, if you or I were to teach this or to fill in the blank, we would probably say something like, close your eyes, or look the other way, or maybe get, one of those eye patches, like, a pirate or something, and put on your eye, look like the guy, the stressed out guy from Avengers, who never smiles. But that's not what Jesus said. Here's what he said as we look on. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. Whatever, Jesus, okay? That's funny, nice joke, kind of gross, but he wasn't joking. And he went on, he said this, and if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. Chop, chop, scoop. Okay? The title of the talk. Okay, or maybe it should be scoop, chop, chop, because you got to have to scoop it out before you chop your hands. Anyway, so, anyways, seriously, Jesus? Are you nuts? What are you talking about? If my hand causes me to sin, you want me to cut it off? Or if my eye causes me to sin, you want me to stick a spoon in there and gouge it out? I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Jesus, but we kind of need those body parts just to get along in life, okay? To get around. And wow, it might hurt. That sounds crazy. And Jesus was using some pretty strong language, graphic language here. And he wasn't just being a boy, all right? My son Michael, he talks about blood and guts all the time, blowing things up, cutting things off, and just being a boy. Like this one time when we lived in Sisters, Oregon, we had this pest problem called woodpeckers, and they would just come and tear at the side of your house. And so I got to one day, and I actually, the whole story of how it happened, I'll maybe tell that another time, but I actually broke the thing's neck, and so there it is laying dead, and you're like, how'd you break his neck? It's another story. So anyway, he's laying there dead. He's, kind of bloody. And I go, Michael, come look at this. And he comes up and he looks. He goes, oh, that's cool. He goes, can I keep it? And I go, no, you can't. I said, yeah, I promise you can't tell your older sister, and because she would have gotten really upset. And he goes, I can't keep, well, can I have a leg anyway? Can I at least have a leg? And I said, dude, what are you thinking, man? He's just being a boy, right? But Jesus wasn't just being a older boy when he was talking about that, okay? Now imagine you hear these words of Jesus for the first time. Your eyes are big, and you already squirm at the thought of getting dust in your eye, much less anything else, right? And, or you look at your hands and you think, I like having my hands. I remember the first time that I saw The Empire Strikes Back, and I was just a kid. And then there was that scene when I saw Darth Vader cut Luke's hand off. I was mortified. I never looked at Darth Vader the same again. And I'd look at my hand, and I was just, and now Jesus wants me to do the same thing. Is he Darth Vader? But, he's not Darth Vader. But he also wasn't kidding. And so, here's this thought. What's worth losing an eye over? What's worth losing your hand over? And honestly, I can't think of very much that's worth losing anything like that over. Okay, there's a film came out a few years ago called 127 Hours, and based on a true story. And I didn't see the movie, but I remember reading the article at the time and reading about it, about a man named Aaron Ralston, who in 2003 went hiking in some canyon in southern Utah. And he didn't tell anyone where he was going or what he was doing, because he didn't expect anything bad to happen. Well, as he was climbing down this ridge, an 800-pound boulder jarred loose, and it crushed his right hand, and it pinned him there between the cliff and the boulder, and there's nothing he could do about it. Nobody knew who he was at. He tried to get out of there. There was no way he could move that boulder, and so he thought, I'm done for, and he tried to survive. He would just barely drink his water that he was with him, eat a little bit of food that he had with him, and he was there for 5 days. Nobody came after him because nobody knew where to look. And he even got his video camera and filmed himself telling his loved ones goodbye, apologizing for people that he hurt and so forth. He got his dull knife and he carved in the rock next to him, R.I.P., Aaron Ralston, with an estimated date of when he thought he would die. Well, he thought he would die, and the next morning he actually woke up and he was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm still alive. And all of a sudden, the will to live kicked in. And he leveraged with the boulder, and he broke both bones in his arms. Got his dull pocket knife that you wouldn't even spend $10 for. And he took an hour to cut his hand off. He climbed back up, then rappelled 65 feet down with one hand, and encountered some other hikers who happened to be there. They called Air Life, and he lived. And it's like, wow. And you're not sure if you can be inspired by that or depressed by that or what, but you're like, my goodness. And I look at that and I wonder to myself, if that were me, would I do that? What would be worth? I don't know if I could. What would be worth? Is cutting my hand off worth saving my life? And perspective is powerful, because Aaron Ralston, he said this. He goes, he realized at that point, it's just an arm. It's just an arm, and he'd rather live without his arm or his hand than just to die. Jesus, I'm still not sure I could do that, but Jesus uses extreme language here because of extreme love that he has for us. And of course, the perspective that he comes with and desires us to have too. The shocking words that he used here were to get our attention, all right? They weren't really literal in that he expects us to do that, but they kind of were in a sense. If that kind of makes sense, all right? So I invite you, if you want to take notes today, there's a green sheet in your handout, and you can follow along. If you're here and you're visiting, you're a seeker, hopefully this gives you a good idea of the uniqueness of Christianity and of what Christ followers really have a hard time with in following Christ, because this is not easy. So here we go. First point here, Jesus confronts a common problem. Okay, now that's not a common problem, but that's an easier problem than what we're going to look at today. All right, so let's take a look at the context of Jesus' statement. Okay, where he said to cut things off, all right, and gouge things out. Now his listeners, they didn't think that it was a common problem, but they were about to be hit with a reality brick by Jesus when he went on. Okay, so right before the cutoff parts, he said this. You have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. And Jesus was quoting right there one of the 10 commandments. And really, it's a good command. God wasn't trying to be mean, when he commanded it. He's not trying to rip us off by saying it. Being faithful to our spouse is for our protection and our peace and our joy and our health and security in life. And when you think about it, in all the situations that you've heard or experienced or when did adultery ever end well for everybody? Besides a stupid reality show, okay, which isn't reality, but can anyone think of when it ended well? No, we can't. I'm so glad you cheated on me, honey. Thank you. Well, I was thinking of you, dear, it's great to know that I'm not your one and only. You don't hear things like that, right? And you don't feel things like that, because it doesn't end well. And just like a dad, I look at my kids and I pray for them. And the last thing I would ever want them to experience is adultery in their life when they get older. You following? Man, if someone marries one of my daughters and then cheats on them, I may not be pastoring anymore. I don't know. It would be hard to contain myself. Why? Because I love my kids. And it's the same thing with God. That's why he said, don't do this, okay? So, but his hearers, they were like, yeah, we've heard that before. We're tracking with you, we agree with it. In fact, we're doing pretty good with it too. And I think we've got this one down. No adultery here, as long as we look but don't touch, we're good, right? After all, hey, God created beauty and it's okay to admire it, right? And then Jesus says this next thing. He said, but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And in that one statement, Jesus just exposed the guilt of every single person, every single one of his listeners. Guilt for something that they thought that they were doing good with. And I'll tell you, that was not a good day to be in church with Jesus, okay, for those people. And so the people, of the time, they really prided themselves in their own sense of morality and keeping the law and God's instructions. And so when they heard or they felt like they had it together in certain areas of their life, okay, it was like more points for them on the scoreboard, okay? Run up the score for me because I'm doing this, no adultery, check. Doing good. That's got to be worth a touchdown, a 2-point conversion, But then Jesus looks at the replay in their mind and heart, and he reverses the call. He removes the points, and he actually puts them in the negative. And they're like, oh, what's going on? And the bad news is, you guys are all guilty, is what he says. And the good news is, you're all guilty. You're not alone, okay? And there's an answer for it. We're all guilty. I should say that. So Jesus, he wanted them and us to understand that sin is, next point, a heart issue. This is something that Jesus wants to make absolutely clear. It's not just about the do's and the don'ts and the rules and regulations and checklists. Sin is a condition of the soul. It's a condition inside of us. And when we sin, whether it's adultery or telling a lie or being a Seahawks fan, it reflects the condition of the soul. Okay, maybe I should take the Seahawks fan back. But anyway, but sin is a condition of the soul. Sinful actions reflect the condition of inside. And God, in his love, looks at us. His love for us looks at the inward condition, not just the outward action. Okay? Because sin has terrible consequences for our lives and our souls. It's deceptive in that we don't think it's a big deal. But often it becomes a master in our lives. Only it's not a kind master at all. It's ruthless, it's destructive, it's evil. It feels good in the moment. It's like an itch, that needs to be scratched, and you scratch, and you're like, oh, yeah, feels good. And then it just wants to be scratched. The more you scratch it, it wants to be scratched again and again, and until you start bleeding. It makes you bleed. And you're like, oh, and it treats you as a slave. Let's take a look at lust for a minute, because Jesus mentions it on the same level as adultery. And the next point is lust is unbridled sexual desire. And we actually, I spoke a little bit on this about 4 months ago, and there's a few things here that I think are worth looking at again. And so, anyway, lust is actually defined as intense, uncontrolled, illicit, or unbridled sexual desire. One definition of lust was passionate and overmastering desire. Sexual desire is one thing. It's good. It's a good thing. It's natural. God created with us, created for us. It's a gift that we have. But when that desire begins to dominate and control our thoughts, our heart, our actions, that's when it becomes lust, and that's when it crosses the line. When we begin thinking or looking at people as an object to manipulate for personal pleasure rather than to serve and love for their own sake, that's lust, and that's wrong, and that's what Jesus says. This is the same thing as adultery. And it will consume us faster and more completely than a fire in a barn full of hay will consume that barn if we aren't careful. It's one of the reasons why the Bible says that people should get married. That's a good thing. Okay. So the next point here is lust, like any sin, deceptively destroys people. And it doesn't take much honesty to look around and see the destructive power of unbridled sexual desire around us. All right? Whether it's rampant sexually transmitted diseases like HIV or AIDS or herpes or whatever it might be. Oh, well, we can get treated for it. Who still wants it though? Right? And there's treatments and so forth, but it's still. Okay? Or the pain of broken families. Men and women cheating on each other, whether they're married or not. There's divorce, and there's internet affairs, and unwanted pregnancies, and over 50 million abortions that have happened in the United States since it was made legal. That's a lot of children because of unbridled sexual desire. You look weird. You're looked at as weird if you're still a virgin after graduating high school. That's what our culture says today. Sex trafficking around the world, in places like Asia and also the United States. Why? Because of unbridled sexual desire. And these things demoralize and destroy the lives of millions of innocent girls. Prostitution. People in jail for prostitution. We see sex crimes in the headlines daily, don't we? I mean, there's always somebody who's being convicted of something. Sexual abuse of minors in the United States is out of control. Then you have Catholic priests and pastors who I personally know that have messed up and fallen. And is there any question that lust deceptively destroys lives? It's one of the most powerful monsters that we will ever face. And it's easy to fall into because lust is everywhere and accepted and it's promoted and encouraged as a normal way of life. Just give in to those desires. Everyone's doing it. Hey, you don't need restraints. Just go for it. Unless, of course, it's illegal. Then, okay, stop, hit the brakes. And you're like, huh? Well, how do I do that? If I'm going 95 miles an hour and all of a sudden I see, the turnaround, is 30 feet in front of me. How do you stop when you're going off a cliff? Right? And and this is a big reason why Jesus not only brings up the issue, but he also uses strong language with it. It's not to make anyone feel guilty or shameful for their past. It's not to dig up painful memories, so sometimes that happens. Jesus wasn't in there, they feel guilty now. No, that's not his heart. It's because he loves. He says, look, this is where it leads. Okay? It's not just about what you do. It's where it starts. And I want more for you. I want better for you. And there's an answer for you. Now, nowhere did he say, if you've done this, you're going to hell. No, not at all. There's an answer. You following me? Okay? He always brings hope into a situation. Now, most, if not all of us, have failed in one way or another in regards to lust. Jesus' purpose, again, is to open our eyes to what we are all facing, that it's serious, and to give hope for a way through, and to discover the healing power of God. Let's just go through some stats real quick. And we looked at these a few months ago, but let's look at them again. Just the beast that we're facing, okay? The size of the porn industry rakes in $12 billion a year in the United States. That's twice the total combined annual revenue of ABC, NBC, and CBS combined. That's a lot of coin. 50% of Christian men and 20% of Christian women are addicted to pornography. That's huge. 60% of Christian women admitted to having significant struggles with lust. 68% of divorces involve one party meeting a new partner online, over the internet. 56% of divorces involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. 1 out of 3 visitors to adult websites are women, and those struggling with sexual addiction under the age of 35, 40% are women. So it's definitely not just a male problem as we often think it is. Okay, the fastest growing group of internet porn consumers are 12 to 17-year-olds, and the average age of exposure to porn is 11. I was about 11 or 12 when I was going to Catholic school, and when I first saw a magazine, and never forgot it, never. And it's like that's the right age. I mean, as far as what they've come up with. But lust is a deceptively powerful monster that our culture and people in churches end up losing the battle to, and it ruins lives. Next point here is sin spreads like cancer. Just like cancer cells in a body start, in one internal organ, making it sick. Then they move to another, then another, until the whole body is filled with stage 4 cancer, and they're ready to die. I have a clip that kind of illustrates what I'm talking about, and yes, it is from the Avengers. So, well, that's not quite the clip. There we go.
You have heart. Please don't. I still need that.
This doesn't have to get any messier.
Of course it does. I've come too far for anything else. I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
Loki, brother of Thor.
We have no quarrel with your people.
An ant has no quarrel with a boot.
You planning to step on us?
I come with glad tidings.
Of a world made free.
Free from what?
Freedom. Freedom is life's great lie. Once you accept that in your heart, you will know peace.
Yeah, you say peace. I kind of think you mean the other thing.
Sir, Director Fury is stalling. This place is...
That scene there, what a picture of sin, where it, just as he put that scepter on his heart, and it starts in the heart, and it spreads, and it begins to control our mind and our body, and they were like his slaves right there. And it's really a picture of sin. And I like his lines where Loki said that I bring tidings of a world made free from freedom, because that's exactly what sin does, and it spreads like a cancer. See, we can use the Avengers for things like that. But anyway, but something must be done about it before it gains control in our life and leads us down roads that we don't want to go. Where the end destination can become our worst nightmare. And so let's move on. Let's look at the destination, okay? What we do today impacts where we end up tomorrow. What we do today impacts where we end up tomorrow. It's the law of sowing and reaping, just like a farmer. The seeds I sow today will produce a crop tomorrow, okay? But the crop is always determined by the seed. And so let's take a look at the rest of what Jesus said in this passage. He said this: if your right eye, so first he talks about adultery and lust, and he goes, if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into that H word, hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Okay? Now, in case you're visiting with us or in case you brought a friend, I understand that you might be getting a little nervous. Okay? What? Okay? Oh, he's going to talk about hell, okay, right? Come on, the journey is supposed to be positive and uplifting. Hell is outdated and so manipulative. Why are you talking about hell, okay? And I think there are two topics that are a visitor's worst nightmare, or the person who brought a friend worst nightmare when they try to church. One is giving, the other one's hell. Anyway, but these are Jesus' words. And whether you believe in a literal eternal hell or in a figurative one, wouldn't you agree that there are certain things in life that are worth sacrificing in order so that you can avoid some type of hell later on? Would you agree? Yes. Okay, that's a good answer. I do too. How many of us have been through a living hell that could have been avoided if we had made different decisions earlier on? Who of us has regrets where we could actually say, if I could go back, I would give my right hand to undo what I did. If only I could do that. And I think there are people in this room who would agree with that, 100%. Now, we can talk about, hellish situations in this life all day, but I do believe that Jesus was also talking about the eternal destination of hell. And follow me on this for a minute. Next point is, sin does not exist in heaven. Okay? And there is no such thing as sin there. Just like cancer doesn't exist in this carpet. Okay? It might look like it does, but it doesn't. There's nothing in this carpet to keep cancer alive, right? And it's the same thing like sin in heaven. It doesn't. To which some people might think, no sin in heaven? Well, why would I want to be there, right? Which is partly what Jesus is getting at, and I'll explain that in a minute. But so if our hand causes us to sin, and the sin spreads through a person like a cancer, and sin cannot exist in heaven, we can see why Jesus would say, hey, cut it off. Separate that sinful part from you so the rest of you can enter into heaven. You following? That's Jesus' logic here. And that's a picture that Jesus wants us to see. No, he doesn't literally mean to go get a hacksaw or meat cleaver or a pocket knife or whatever you want to do and cut your hand off to do the deed. It's not that simple. But whatever in our lives is causing us to sin, to lust, to go down roads that are destructive, cut it out, is what Jesus is saying. Get rid of it. Get it out of your life, because it will consume you, it will separate you from God, and lead to an eternal destruction of your soul, when God instead wants an eternal restoration of your soul. Right? Next point here is sin makes hell desirable. Okay? It makes hell desirable. How is that? See, sin or lust that is not stopped or cut off will cause a person like you or me to desire that sin or that object or that person that we lust after, to cause us to desire that more than we would desire God. Okay? Where desire for that is greater than it is for God. And we begin to love sin, to love that behavior, that addiction more and more and more. Where our desire for what will destroy our lives is greater than our desire for God who will restore our lives. And that sin can lead a person to not desire heaven and to actually maybe even desire hell if they can be convinced that they can continue in that sin after death. You following? See, just like Gollum in Lord of the Rings, right? My precious, okay? And, over that, the freaky little thing just wanted that ring so badly that he followed it all the way to death. I was seeing that creepy little smile following into that lava pit, and he died for that dumb little ring that had such power over his life. And what a picture of what a person is like who desires hell and sin more than what actually makes sense. True life. Jesus loves you and me so much that he spoke in extreme language to get our attention so that we wouldn't be Gollum. See, hell is not just about fire and brimstone and the devil. Hell is the eternal disintegration of the soul. And that disintegration begins with sin. And though that disintegration is painful and lonely and tormenting, it's actually what a person desires, to be separated from God so they can have what they want. So what is hell? It's nothing more than God giving a person what they ask for. It's the eternal trajectory of the soul away from God. All alone. And it's not fun. Void of God in everything he is, and goodness and peace and life and everything good. It's interesting that the Greek word that Jesus used for sin, okay, because he spoke in Greek when this was written down. It means sin. It means something that's offensive. But it also can be translated as to cause to no longer believe. To cause to no longer believe. If your hand or your eye does something that causes you to no longer believe, cut it off. Get rid of it. Make sense? Sin is so powerful that it can cause a person of faith to no longer believe in the God that loves them. And we can see why Jesus used extreme language because of the extreme consequences. So let's look at doing the deed. Okay, I'm going to finish off here. First of all, get rid of it. Okay. I can't imagine, like he says, literally, to gouge out my eyeball, and I can't imagine under what circumstances that would ever be a good idea. I can't even put Visine in my eyes without crying like a girl. It's like torture. But it's funny. I read a couple of weeks ago this restaurant in Kentucky that got shut down. It was a Chinese restaurant got shut down because someone saw roadkill in the kitchen. And it turned out that the owner's son confessed, he picked up a deer off of I-95 or whatever it was, and wheeled it into the kitchen. And he said, "Well, I didn't know there was anything wrong with that." So I wonder how many times that restaurant did it. But what they did when they found out, what did they do? You're done. They cut it off They stopped it because it's not sanitary, right? It's disgusting, and someone can get sick. What do? They cut it off. So get rid of it. If a person were to get something unfortunate, like gangrene, we don't call amputation extreme in that case, do we? It's just part of what you have to do. Same with frostbite, same with goes with cancer. If sin or lust is as bad or as worse in terms of the condition of the soul, and the resulting destination is cutting something off that causes us to sin, really that extreme? Not really. Again, speaking figuratively, don't cut off your hand, okay? Let me say that for legal purposes. Do not go home and get a cleaver and cut off your hand or a spoon and gouge out your eyes, okay? All right, here we go. So question, what stands between you and the life or eternity that God wants for you? Is there something that we're holding on to that keeps us from life? Is it a person? Is it a hobby? Is it an addiction? Is it a possession or a goal? Is it anger? Is it bitterness? Is it lust? Is it a website or something? Do you know that actually 1 out of 5 divorces cite Facebook as a cause in their decision? And if Facebook is something like that for you, wouldn't it be worth it just to cut it off? I think it would, definitely. Might be time to chop, scoop. Okay? Just don't do it to roadkill. Anyway, and notice that Jesus said throw it away. Pitch it, somewhere where you'd never go back and pick it up. Next, no matter how extreme the cost, get rid of it, no matter how extreme the cost. Why would we trade anything for eternity and then miss out in both lives? Jim Elliot, he was a missionary to a tribe of headhunters in Ecuador earlier in the 20th century. And he was eventually killed by that tribe as he was trying to lead them to Christ. Okay, they hunted his head. They killed him. And here's what he said before he died. He said, "He is no fool to give up what he cannot keep in order to gain what he cannot lose." For anyone here, whether you're a seeker or a follower of Christ, you might think, that's crazy. Is it? See, none of us can keep our lives. It doesn't matter what you believe or what you do, we can't keep this life. It's on loan to us. We are going to die. I'm just glad you came to church today. We are going to, okay? And we'll be taxed too, okay, anyway. But the question is, where will we find ourselves after we die, and what got us there? Okay? Here's what Jesus said. "For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will find it. What good will it be for a man if he gains the whole world yet forfeits his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul?" There really is no price too great. Next, nobody can do it for you. Notice that Jesus didn't say, "Hey, find a friend with a knife or a sharp spoon, okay, and have them do it for you." No, he said, "You go do it." All right? My dad, he told me this story a long time ago when he was like 18 or something, and he had this friend of his who was just dead scared of being drafted, to go into Vietnam. And he didn't want to go to Vietnam or the Korean War, or whatever was going on at the time. I can't remember. But so he comes over to my dad's house, and he hands him a knife, takes off his suit, goes, "Cut off my big toe." My dad's like, "What?" "Here, cut it off. I don't want to get drafted. That'll keep me from getting drafted." My dad goes, "Okay." So he gets down there, and he's actually about to do it, and then he goes, "No, I can't do this. What are you thinking? It's crazy. You do it. If you want to stay out of it, you do it." And, eventually, so I'm glad my dad didn't do it. He actually had some sense. And the other guy, he didn't get up the guts to do it. So he didn't. But like any decision of faith, okay, Jesus calls us to it. And nobody can do it for us. Nobody can believe for us. Nobody can make decisions for us. It's personal. And we need to do it. We need to cut it off. And last, make God your desire. Replace that sin and desire for it with a desire for God, to know him personally, to love him deeply. We pursue that which we desire. And if we desire God, we'll pursue him. And if we pursue him, we'll find him, and we'll be with him, and we'll find life that lasts forever. And God is able to make He's able to cause us to know his love, and that we might actually love him and know what it is to worship. Let's stand. Lord God, thanks for this day, and thank you for every person in this place, people that you have given your life for. Jesus, you cut yourself off from the living so that we can have life. I pray, God, for everyone here, whatever it might be that might be in our mind right now, in our head, in our heart, that we know is causing us to sin, to cause us to desire not you, but it. God, I pray that by the power of your Spirit, you will give each person the strength and the willingness to do the deed and get it done and cut it off and cut out their lives. Help each one here to see, help us all, God, daily to see your wisdom in this and to see your extreme words because of your extreme love, because of your extreme consequences. And may we really, truly get to know the love of God and to love you, God, from our heart and with all of our being. To know what it is to love you, to follow you, and to have the life that you want for us, both here and eternity. Pray these things, God, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, well.